I want to do a quick video on when to move plants from indoors to outdoors. And this could also be about when to sow outside, all of those kinds of issues when it comes to gardening and moving plants outside. And of course, this is also assuming that a lot of this is based around like last frost dates. Okay, so this may not be applicable to everyone, of course. But for us, like you can see here in the back, we've got our deck garden here. It's moving and it's kicking. However, we're not, and where we are not out of the frost threat or reasonable frost threat, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. Okay, so it's you know, still relatively early May. I think it's May 8th right now, and for us, we very well could get another frost. In fact, it's probable. Okay, it's probable. And so what I want to offer today is basically 3 ways to determine when to plant outside. You know, basically 3 considerations that will help you to understand when to do that in your area. Of course, everything is specific to your area. And you know, you can see right here, there's a hoop house out there, right? And we've actually planted out that hoop house already. In fact, we planted it out last weekend. Okay, early May. It's a little risky because it's not a real tight hoop house and all that stuff, but we wanted to do it anyway. And I'll talk about that because we did frost sensitive plants in there. Whereas on this deck garden, we have some things planted out, but they all can handle a little bit of frost, right? So that's the first kind of foundational thing, is understanding what plants can handle a little bit of frost and what can't, right? That's obviously going to determine a lot of things here. But okay, the 3 things on when you can move frost sensitive plants outside. First is to look it up on these calculators, these last frost date type of websites. There's places where you can go and you can put your zip code in, and it's going to spit out for you some information. Usually that information will do things like your growing season. It might say, oh, you've got 90 days of frost free on average, or 110 or whatever. Okay, it's also going to tell you your last frost date. Now, the one thing you have to understand about that is that this is all based on probabilities, right? So even though they have a last frost date, let's say it's May 15th. That's just there's a probability. There's still a chance you can get frost, but it's low enough, right? And so you have to understand the threshold of those types of calculators, right? Maybe at May 15th, there's only a 10% chance that you'll get another frost, okay? And which is a very acceptable risk for certain plants. Okay, so in certain plants it makes sense to wait longer, because even though you can technically plant outside, the soil temperature is low, you're going to get almost no growth anyway. I mean, there's a lot of considerations there, but the first piece of information that you can get is based on these calculators, and it's helpful. Okay, it's helpful. It's not the whole story. Okay, you need to actually take the 3 things that I'm going to tell you all in conjunction with one another. This is the best way to make decisions on when to plant outside, and then just go for it, right? What's the harm? And I'll talk about ways to mitigate that as well. Okay, the second way to determine when to plant outside is based on what I call local knowledge. Okay, and there's good local knowledge and there's bad local knowledge. Okay, here's what I consider bad local knowledge. It's people repeating old folklore. Okay, it's like, oh, once the snow is off of this mountain, then you can plant. All right, I'm not saying that's totally useless. It's something that you can take into consideration. But good local knowledge, better than people repeating old adages about Memorial Day or Mother's Day or the snow off of this or that mountain, is talk to your neighbors that are in your specific area. Okay, and say, when historically have you been able to do this, with relative certainty? Again, everything is based on probabilities, and all of these things are highly impacted by your microclimate. This is why it's not a good thing to just take a generalized statement like plant, when the snow is off of that mountain. All right, it doesn't take into consideration your elevation, your latitude, your aspect of your property. Better to talk to neighbors that are right around you that have similar altitudes and latitudes and aspects. Okay, much better local knowledge. Okay, so you can plug in the zip code It's going to give you certain information, but it's not going to take into account your microclimate. You have local lore, right? So you can get the generalized stuff on Mother's Day, Memorial Day, a little bit more knowledge, but again, doesn't take into consideration your microclimate. Local knowledge from your neighbors with similar climates. This is getting really good here. This is really, really good information. This is a little bit more precise and detailed, right? They're in a very similar microclimate. Now understand that your microclimate and a half-mile away could be very different depending on where you are. Here in North Idaho, as we're butted up against the Rocky Mountains, that is very true. It could be very different from one property to the next, okay? And then the third thing is based on your experience on your property. Now, you may not have much of it, but that's okay. And that gets me to the final point, which is to just go for it. Right? Plant some things. Like if you take all that information into account and you come up with a date and you go, okay, May 15th, try it. And then here's how you mitigate that. Okay, so we've got the zip code calculators, we've got the local knowledge, and then we have your own experience, and that's going to give you good solid information on how to make decisions. And then try it. And then here's what I recommend. And it's exactly what we did in our hoop house, okay? In our hoop house, we planted frost-sensitive plants, okay? But I also held back some tomatoes, some peppers, some other plants inside, so that if we do get a frost, which we did, and what's interesting is we got a frost, and we lost a few plants. We probably lost 10% of the plants in there. Well, that's okay. We're growing for ourselves, and I've got lots of backups. And so guess what? Those are going to get plugged in and be able to restock the ones we lost, right? That's a great mitigation strategy. Hold back a few. Go plant some, hold some back, and then you'll be good. And this is the way to go about doing this, all right? So there's just three ways and some other tips on when to plant outdoors.